"She'll be well cared for," my daughter said, holding my hand with just enough pressure to seem sincere. But by the time the door locked behind me and the soft click echoed like a gavel in a courtroom, I knew something wasn't right. The room smelled like lemon-scented bleach and stale upholstery. One window sealed shut. One bed too stiff. One camera in the corner, blinking its quiet red light like a warning. I didn't argue when they took my bag. I didn't question the clipboard forms, the signature my daughter had already left behind. "Just for a few weeks," she'd said, "until you're stronger." I believed her. I shouldn't have. I was 78, not senile. But I suppose even sharp minds want to believe their children still mean well. The woman who brought me in wore scrubs and a badge that only said K. Ruiz. She smiled the way flight attendants do when the plane hits turbulence. "We'll check in on you every few hours. Meals will come to your door." She pointed to a tray slot that opened from the hallway. "And if you need anything, just press the button." There was no button. I sat down on the bed, careful not to wrinkle the slacks I'd ironed that morning. I'd worn them to seem composed, capable. I hadn't packed my robe or slippers because I wasn't moving in. That's what I told myself. The tray slot opened just after 6 wad. A paper plate with lukewarm chicken and something that might have been mashed carrots. A plastic cup of water. No silverware. I tapped the door lightly. "Excuse me?" No answer. I ate with my fingers. Slowly, methodically. I'd worked through worse in my life. The first winter after Frank died. The year my left hand stopped working after the stroke, and I had to teach myself how to write again. I had learned to survive in silence. But this was not silence. This was erasure. There were no books, no TV, no phone. Just a single chair, the bed, a bathroom the size of a pantry. I opened every drawer, checked under the mattress. Nothing, no calendar. No way to know the time except by how the sunlight shifted on the wall. I moved the chair to face the camera, stared back. After an hour, maybe 2, the overhead light dimmed slightly. It was either night or the place was simulating one. I folded the napkin that came with the meal into a tight square. I placed it on the windowsill just to leave a mark. The next morning, it was gone. Someone had come in while I slept. I hadn't heard the door open. I hadn't stirred. That frightened me more than the camera. I used to run a school library. 36 years cataloging, arranging, restoring. There was a method to my days. Children came in with backpacks too heavy for their spines and eyes that still looked for answers in books. I remember the sound of pages turning, the scratch of pencils, the calm that only reading could bring. Now there was only this room and the throb in my temple. I knocked again that morning, louder. The door remained shut. Around noon, the tray slot clicked open again. A different paper plate, another plastic cup. Still no cutlery. This time it was rice and what looked like canned peas. I pressed my fingers to the warm edge of the slot and held them there, just to feel that something on the other side was alive. My daughter's name was Sharon. Still is, I suppose. She used to braid my hair when she was little, sitting on the floor while I read aloud from old hardcovers we borrowed from the library. "We'll always take care of each other," she'd say, tracing promises into my palm. I believed that, too. I don't know when she decided I was no longer a person, but a project. A responsibility to be outsourced. She'd said it like a kindness. "The caregiver will feed you." As if that were enough. By the 3rd day, I began to notice patterns. The lights hummed louder at 10 a.m. The tray slot clicked precisely at 12:05 and 5:58. The footsteps in the hallway passed every 90 minutes. I counted them, logged them in my mind. I needed something to measure, to hold on to. I started whispering to the camera. Little things. "I know you're there. I remember what freedom feels like. I used to read about women like me. I wasn't asking for rescue. I just wanted the room to know I hadn't disappeared. That night, I used a bobby pin I'd hidden in the hem of my waistband, an old habit from travel days, to scratch my name into the underside of the bed frame. Nora Brennan was here. Still is. The next morning, I woke up to find the sheets changed and the bed frame polished. The name was gone, but not me. The fourth morning, I stopped pretending I was here for my own good. I stood near the door when I heard the footsteps coming. 3 pairs, softer shoes, likely nurses, and I spoke through the metal. "Excuse me," I said clearly, calmly. "I'd like to speak with whoever's in charge." Silence. I waited. I'd been patient all my life. You learn that when you're a school librarian dealing with 30 loud children and 1 broken printer. After a moment, a muffled voice responded, "We'll pass the request along." Then the sound of retreating steps. No other response. No questions about how I felt or whether I needed anything. Not even a lie to smooth the surface. They wanted me passive. And if not passive, then confused. I began to understand the purpose of the room. Not to help, but to dull. No stimulation, no clocks, no radio, no human exchange beyond the tray slot, and voices that vanished before you could ask a second question. It wasn't care. It was containment. I found myself doing math. If the first tray came around 6 and the second close to noon, then I could mark the hours between by pacing. I walked back and forth between the far wall and the bathroom door, counting softly. 58 steps. 10 rounds an hour. It helped pass the time, and it helped me stay sane. That evening, after the second tray, I tapped twice on the camera's lens. "Who are you trying to convince?" I asked. "Me or yourselves?" No reply, of course, but the light blinked twice, not like before. Almost like a response. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the chair facing the door. The stillness of the hallway was not silence, it was avoidance. The kind that institutions prefer. Just enough effort to claim dignity is being preserved while stripping it away, one small erosion at a time. When Sharon finally called, it was through a monitor embedded into the wall. Her image flickered, grainy and delayed. She looked composed, her voice clipped in that professional tone she'd adopted in her 40s. "Hi, Mom. Just checking in. How are they treating you?" I leaned in. "Like a locked drawer," I said. She blinked, clearly surprised by the clarity in my voice. "That's an odd way to put it." "No books, no phone, no walking outside. Meals come through a hole. They took my watch. I'm not sure what part of this is supposed to help me recover." Sharon hesitated, eyes flicking off screen, probably toward someone else in the room. "You're safe, Mom. That's what matters." I studied her face, the expensive blouse, the subtle makeup. "Did you sign guardianship papers?" She avoided the question. "You're just there for observation. A few more weeks, then we'll reevaluate." "We?" I said. Sharon didn't answer. I leaned back in the chair, folding my hands. "Do you remember when you were 12 and broke your ankle jumping from the back fence?" "What?" "I stayed with you in the hospital every night. The nurses told me I could go home, that you'd be fine, but I stayed. Because I didn't want you to wake up and be alone." She said nothing. "Now here I am," I added, "and you didn't even pack me a book." The screen went dark. Later that night, I counted a new set of footsteps, heavy, measured, less frequent than the others. Someone in different shoes, boots, maybe. Administrative. They paused outside my door. A clipboard tapped lightly against the wall, then left. They were watching me more closely now. I stopped eating the food. Not in protest, but because I didn't trust it. It wasn't poisoned, not literally. But there's something about being fed without choice that turns the food sour. Instead, I saved the crackers, wrapped them in a tissue, folded small, and hid them in the lining of the pillow. That became my pattern. Hide small things. The plastic cup, a napkin, the dry end of toast. I'd spent my life building systems. I could build one here too. But my body was changing. The stiffness in my knees was worse. I could feel it when I bent to pick up a dropped spoon, one of the few they forgot to remove one day. My skin felt thinner. My shoulders ached from the tension of always being alert. I spoke less. They wanted me voiceless, but I wasn't ready to oblige. I began mouthing words silently, books I'd read, poems I'd memorized in college. Do not go gentle into that good night. Over and over, as if language could stitch something in me back together. Then on the 6th day, something new happened. The tray slot opened at noon as usual, but instead of food, a folded note sat on the metal shelf. A piece of lined paper, torn unevenly, with 5 words in hurried pencil. You're not the only one. My hands trembled as I reached for it. I held the note close to my chest, heart hammering in my ribs. Someone was watching. Someone else was awake. I didn't eat the food that day either. My hunger was no longer physical. It had changed form, become sharp, directed. I tucked the note under the thin mattress after rereading it 20 times. You're not the only one. 5 words that cracked the walls wider than any argument I could have shouted through the door. Someone inside knew what this place was. Someone else had eyes open, like mine. That knowledge shifted something in my spine. Not hope, not yet, but tension, with purpose. If I wasn't alone, then maybe I wasn't crazy. And if I wasn't crazy, then I could fight. The camera didn't blink that day. That's what struck me first. For the past week, it pulsed gently every minute or two, as if to say, "We see you." Now it stayed dim. Had they turned it off? Or was someone else watching now? I paced less that afternoon. Instead, I sat at the edge of the bed and began organizing the pieces in my mind. 1. They had taken away all means of timekeeping. 2. I had not been evaluated by a doctor since arriving. 3. There was no emergency button or bell. 4. My daughter no longer used the word temporary. I used to teach research skills. Verify your sources. Question the gaps. I could hear myself saying it to 8th graders who wanted to cite Wikipedia as gospel. Now I had to listen to my own rules. The silence here wasn't passive. It was curated. That night, I took the plastic fork from the lunch tray, the first utensil in 2 days, and snapped off one tine. It broke jagged. I used it to etch small marks beneath the bed slat again, counting each day. 1 for each meal cycle. 7 lines now. A week. The next morning, I refused the breakfast tray. Instead, I tapped 3 times on the camera. Then I stood directly beneath it and whispered, "You want me quiet, but you forgot. I've read every book on resistance ever written. You can't erase a woman who remembers." An hour passed, or 2, then footsteps. Different this time. Rubber soles, moving cautiously. Slower. Then a key in the door. The first time it had opened since I'd arrived. A young woman stepped inside, maybe 24, dressed in pale blue scrubs, her hair in a messy bun, badge clipped low where most patients wouldn't notice it. Her eyes were wary, but not unkind. "I'm just here to check vitals," she said quietly. I didn't move. "Name?" She glanced at the camera, then lowered her voice. "Maya." I nodded slowly. "Are you the one who left the note?" She didn't answer, just moved forward and wrapped the cuff around my arm. "Breathe normally," she whispered, then added, "I have 5 minutes." My pulse pounded beneath the fabric. How many others? I asked. Maya glanced toward the hallway. I can't say much, but you're not wrong about this place. Is it legal? She gave a slight shrug. Depends who you ask. My voice lowered. My daughter left me here without notice. I was lucid. I still am. I never signed papers. No evaluation. This isn't a care home. It's a warehouse. Her fingers tightened on the Velcro as she removed the cuff. They call it protective seclusion. Happens more often than people realize. Why? I whispered. Money. Convenience. Some families just want to feel like they're doing the right thing without doing anything hard. I closed my eyes briefly. They treat us like we're furniture. But we remember. Maya stood. I can't talk longer, but I'll be back. If you write something down, anything you need sent or saved, hide it under the toilet tank lid. That's the one place they don't check. She turned toward the door, then paused. I'm sorry, Ms. Brennan. You don't belong here. Then she was gone. The lock clicked again behind her. I stood frozen for a while, breathing like I'd just run a race. Then I moved quickly, forced by instinct. The toilet tank was easy to lift, heavy lid, dry inside. Room for a page or two. I tore the back flap off the tray's paper liner and used the ink from the food label, smeared from condensation, to write a single sentence with my fingernail as a stylus. If something happens to me, contact Helen Worthington, 212-555-7880. Helen was my oldest friend, retired judge, sharp as a tack. I hadn't seen her in 6 months, but we still exchanged letters. She'd know what to do, and she wouldn't let Sharon sweep it all under some rug of medical pretext. By evening, I felt changed. Not freer, not yet, but re-anchored to the world. The feeling of complete helplessness had shifted. Now I had a name, a point of contact, a witness. When the tray came again, lukewarm beef, limp broccoli, I moved it aside. The napkin was folded strangely. Inside, another note. You are not invisible. Keep going. I bit my lip hard, holding back the pressure behind my eyes. For the first time since arriving here, I allowed myself a thought not of survival, but of return. Return to my life. To my name. To the woman I had not finished being. I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to anticipate something. That restless stirring in the chest, the way time starts to carry weight again. For a week, the days had smeared into each other like rain on glass. But now each hour had shape, meaning. Because Maya existed. Because Helen's name was written and hidden. Because I wasn't imagining the bars. I stopped talking to the camera. Not because I was afraid, but because I no longer needed to prove I was sane. I began observing again. Harder. Deeper. The corridor outside had a rhythm. Not just shifts, patterns. 3 sets of staff rotated. Early, mid, and overnight. The woman with the nasal voice who whistled while walking wore perfume with a lavender base. The man who walked heavy was impatient. He banged the tray slot harder than the rest. I filed it all away. I wasn't documenting for safety anymore. I was documenting for leverage. My joints still ached. Sleeping in that narrow bed felt like lying on folded cardboard. But something in me was moving again. Not just my thoughts, my resolve. On the 8th day, Sharon didn't call. I knew she wouldn't. After our last conversation, the dark look on her face when I mentioned the ankle story, I'd seen it. That narrowing of the eyes, that sharp discomfort people show when they're caught twisting their own memories into new shapes. She didn't want to hear me speak like that, with clarity, with reminders. It complicated the story she wanted to tell herself, the one where she was saving me. Maya returned that evening, slipped in quietly again under the guise of checking vitals. But this time, she had something in her sleeve. A folded piece of paper, smaller than her palm. I unfolded it slowly under the blanket. It was printed, typed, a list of names. Occupants, Ward 3, long-term observation. Nora Brennan, age 78, status. Pending evaluation. Alfred Milner, age 82, status. Unresponsive Marisol Pana, age 74, status. Medicated Dorothy Lynn, age 81, status. Delusional. And 5 others, all over 70. All marked with phrases that could mean anything. Or nothing. I pointed at the list. "This is illegal," I whispered. Maya nodded once, jaw tight. "I know, but people sign things they don't understand. Or they don't sign, and someone signs for them. Families hand over power like it's a coat they're done wearing." "I didn't sign anything," I said. "I believe you," she replied. Then she hesitated. "There's something else. Your name. It's on a real estate document. A pending sale." The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. "What sale?" I asked, though I already knew. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "A house on Winchester Lane. Listing came up this week. Owner, Sharon McCabe, acting under durable power of attorney for Nora Brennan." I pressed my palm to the wall to stay upright. "That house is mine," I said. "Paid off. I never gave her power of attorney." Maya placed a hand on my shoulder. "They probably used a medical affidavit. Said you were mentally compromised." I laughed. Quiet, short, bitter. "I ran a library for 30 years. I file my taxes on paper. I remember the names of every teacher who ever asked me for help ordering books, and my daughter erased me with a form." "I'm sorry," she said again. And I believed she meant it. After she left, I lay in bed fully clothed. I didn't sleep. I stared at the camera, not whispering this time, just daring it. Let them watch me know. In the morning, I wrote Helen another message. This one longer. A list of names like Maya's. Dates. The note about the house. I tore the paper into 3 sections and hid them in separate places. The pillowcase seam, the cuff of my pants, behind the plastic cover of the bathroom light. If they found one, they wouldn't find all. That afternoon, I sat in the chair by the door. Tray untouched, posture straight, the kind of posture that says, "I'm still here." The footsteps came again, but they didn't stop. No tray, no Maya, just passing shoes. I waited. Then finally, a voice through the door. Not Maya. Male. Flat. Dry. "Mrs. Brennan, the facility director would like to meet with you tomorrow." I blinked slowly. "Where?" "In the consultation room," he added. "You'll be escorted." I didn't answer. He waited. Then added, "It's protocol." And then he left. Protocol. A word meant to sound safe, neutral, clinical. But protocol is just bureaucracy with its sleeves rolled up. I stayed in the chair long after the voice faded. Something was shifting. I could feel it in the air. They were starting to notice I wasn't folding. I didn't sleep that night either. Not from fear this time, but from calculation. The mention of a consultation room could mean anything. An evaluation, a scare tactic, or a move to discredit me further. I'd seen enough institutional maneuvering in my life to know that what's called a conversation often arrives with a signature page at the end. They wanted something from me now, which meant I had something left to take. At dawn, the overhead lights brightened. That had become their way of signaling morning, not sunrise. The tray slot didn't open. No breakfast. A delay meant something was brewing. I brushed my hair using the flat edge of the plastic tray. Crude, but it restored a small sense of control. I washed my face with cold water and put on the slacks I'd arrived in. A button had gone missing. I safety pinned the waistband closed. Dignity is a discipline. At exactly 9 my guess based on the pace of the day, a woman's voice came through the door. "Mrs. Brennan, we're ready for you." They didn't send Maya. 2 staff members entered. One male, one female, both wearing corporate blue scrubs. They didn't touch me. That surprised me. They stood like security guards, motioning silently. I followed them without speaking. It was the first time I had walked outside my room in over a week. The hallway was longer than I imagined. A gray carpet muffled our steps. No windows. Fluorescent lights hummed above us in rows that stretched endlessly, casting the kind of glare that makes everything look sterile. I glimpsed 2 other closed doors along the corridor. No labels, no signs. I wondered if one of them belonged to Marisol or Dorothy. They led me into a narrow room with frosted glass and a low table. A single chair on one side, 2 on the other. The kind of setup used in job interviews or legal depositions. A pitcher of water sat untouched. A file folder was already on the table. Then he entered. Director Wallace. I recognized him from the brief orientation video they'd shown the day I arrived. He looked taller in person. Thinner, too. Late 50s, maybe. Hands manicured. Eyes that didn't blink often enough. The kind of man who confuses calmness with control. "Mrs. Brennan," he said, taking the seat opposite me. "Thank you for making time." "As if I had a choice," I replied. A ghost of a smile. "We try to maintain respectful communication here." "Communication requires consent," I said evenly. Locking someone in a room isn't communication. He opened the folder, but didn't look at it. "We've received reports that you've been non-compliant with certain aspects of your care." I leaned forward slightly. "Which part? Breathing without permission?" He paused. "We understand transitions can be difficult." "This isn't a transition," I said. "It's containment." Another pause. Then he turned a page, casually. "Your daughter Sharon is concerned about your well-being." So concerned she didn't answer my last 2 messages. He didn't react. "I didn't sign anything," I added. "No authorization, no evaluation. And yet, I'm here." "Your daughter presented documentation indicating durable power of attorney, along with a letter from a private physician suggesting early signs of cognitive decline." That was the first time I felt real heat rise in my chest. "Name the doctor." He flipped another page. "Dr. Eric Mathers." I laughed. Eric Mathers is Sharon's college boyfriend. He once failed a pharmacology board and went into wellness consulting. He's not a licensed practicing physician. Wallace blinked. Just once. "I see," he said. "No, you don't," I answered. "But you will." He leaned back. "Mrs. Brennan, this facility is equipped to help individuals transition through difficult stages of aging. But we are also obligated to ensure their safety. If you continue resisting the care plan, we may have to escalate oversight." "To where?" I asked. "Another locked room with fewer napkins?" His expression changed, just slightly. A corner turned down. "There are processes," he said finally. "But there are also consequences. You may want to think about your cooperation." I stood, not abruptly, calmly, like I had in faculty meetings when administrators tried to cut funding for the library. "I'm not your inmate," I said. "And I'm not confused. I'm a woman who knows her name, her history, and what's been stolen from her. You're not a caregiver. You're a gatekeeper." The aides moved slightly. He raised his hand. "You're free to return to your quarters," he said. "For now." Back in the hallway, they didn't speak to me. I walked on my own. My knees ached, but I didn't limp. Limping is a negotiation. I offered them none. Inside my room, I sat for a long time. No tray had arrived. No camera blinked. The silence was heavier now. Not from absence, but attention. They'd seen me clearly for the first time. And I had spoken not just with defiance, but with record. Everything I'd said was likely on file now, and that was a good thing. That night, Maya came late. Past the usual hours. Her eyes were red. You made noise, she whispered, almost smiling. They noticed. I intended to. She reached into her sleeve. Another folded note. From Helen, she said. My throat tightened. I opened it carefully. One line, handwritten in pen, I recognized instantly. I'm coming. Hold your ground. I folded it slowly, pressing it into my palm like a keepsake. I always have, I whispered. The next morning, the camera blinked again. It wasn't subtle. Its red light pulsed every few seconds like before, only now the rhythm was different. Faster, almost impatient. I sat beneath it in my chair and said nothing. Let them blink. Let them collect their footage, flag their reports, log their observations. I had said what I needed to say. The room had heard me. They didn't send breakfast or lunch. By now, I understood the pattern. Silence after resistance. Their version of punishment wasn't a scream. It was removal. They thought withholding would make me pliable, that hunger would hush me. But I'd gone hungry before. After Frank died, money was thin and grief thinner. I'd lived on oatmeal and memory for 3 months while trying to keep the library running. This was nothing, but it was dangerous. I knew what they were doing. Starve the body, wear down the will, blur the days just enough so the protest becomes a mumble, and the mumble a murmur, and finally, nothing at all. I laid on the bed and stared at the ceiling. 6x8 acoustic tiles. One had a faint stain. Maybe water damage, maybe coffee. That square became my clock. I watched its color shift with the light, using it to count the hours. I whispered lines of poems again. I am not resigned, I said. Millay. Then Dickinson. Much madness is divinest sense. By mid-afternoon, I was lightheaded. My hands trembled slightly when I stood to stretch. I needed calories, yes. But more than that, I needed a sign that Maya was still safe. That Helen's message wasn't a fluke. That this wasn't the moment the story ended in a locked door and silence. The tray slot opened at dusk. But there was no food. Just a napkin. Inside it, 3 sugar packets and a single cracker. Folded into the corner, a note. They're watching me. Can't risk more. You're on the radar now. HW coming Friday. I stared at the date. 2 days away. Friday. I paced the room slowly, rationing the sugar. 1 packet dissolved into my water cup, another tucked under the mattress for tomorrow. The cracker I broke into quarters, chewing each piece 30 times. I used to tell students to chew their food slower. Gives the brain time to register fullness, I'd say. And now here I was, taking my own advice like a ritual. That night, I dreamt for the first time in weeks of a hallway with no doors, only mirrors. In each one, a different version of me. Librarian Nora, wife Nora, mother Nora, this Nora. None of them looked away. When I woke, I wasn't hungry anymore. I was focused. They came again at 10 a.m., not Maya. 2 aides, one with a clipboard, the other carrying what looked like a small recording device. The clipboard woman had a sharp chin and a voice like gravel. We're conducting a reassessment, she said. Please sit. I didn't move. I wasn't notified, I said. It's standard, she replied. You've been exhibiting elevated resistance. We need to reevaluate your risk profile. To what? I asked. To your convenience? She said nothing, just tapped her pen once against the board. The man placed the recorder on the table. State your full name, please. I stared at the device. Then I did what I had always done in the presence of arrogance. I gave it my clearest voice. Nora Catherine Brennan, born May 3rd, 1945. Former head librarian at Crestview School. Widowed. Mother of 1. No diagnosed impairments, no legal guardianship assigned, and very much aware. The woman blinked. The man adjusted the recorder slightly. They asked 20 questions. Dates, names, locations, hypotheticals. If you found a wallet on the street, what would you do? What year is it? Who is the president? Do you believe the staff here is working in your best interest? That last one was the test. Not of memory, but of compliance. I answered all of them, calmly, slowly. No sarcasm, no anger, because they were waiting for a crack, and I would give them none. After the questions ended, the woman stood. "We'll file our report." The man paused. "You've got a strong voice, Mrs. Brennan." "I always have," I said. When they left, I lay back on the bed, exhausted. Not from the test itself, but from what it meant. They were documenting now, framing things, building a file thick enough to justify my erasure. But they'd failed this round. Helen was coming Friday. Until then, I had to hold my ground and my mind. In the bathroom, I pulled the toilet lid off slowly. My first note was gone. In its place, a fresh one. Different paper. Cleaner fold. "I see them too. D. Another ally. Another voice behind a door." I closed the lid gently. Then I whispered, "We are not ghosts. We are not done." On the 10th day, I found myself listening not just to sounds in the hallway, but to the silence between them. That's how you learn in places like this. Not from announcements or explanations, but from what's missing. The way the door handle never turns, the way the tray slot clicks even when there's nothing on it, and how certain voices vanish after a conversation like the one I had yesterday. Maya didn't come that morning. No knock, no tray, no whispered encouragement. Nothing. I waited until midday. Then I moved to the wall and tapped once, firmly. It had become a habit now, not just for the camera's benefit, but for mine. A declaration. I am still here. Then I said it out loud, just once. I am still here. The camera didn't blink. At 3, or what I guessed was 3, the tray slot opened with a quiet clang. A different hand. Rougher. The lunch was basic. Oatmeal with no sweetener and a slice of dry toast. No note, no hidden packet. Just sustenance to keep the body quiet. I ate it anyway, slowly. Not because I was surrendering, but because I would need my strength. Helen was coming tomorrow. I had no way to tell time with certainty, but I felt it in my bones. 10 days inside this place, and already I'd become a creature of rhythms. Around dusk, footsteps stopped near my door, but they didn't move on. I stayed still. Then a whisper, too low to make out words. Another whisper, closer. Then the tray slot opened again. I crouched by it carefully, expecting another empty tray. But instead, something small and soft slid through the slot. A glove, thin, white, worn at the fingertips. Inside the glove was a folded paper towel. I pulled it open. Written in pen, block letters. They watched me. I'm off schedule. Be careful. M. Below that, barely legible. Second floor staff room, file cabinet, bottom drawer. My heart kicked against my ribs. Information. A location. Maya had left a breadcrumb. Risked something. I tucked the glove inside my mattress lining and smoothed the bed. Then I returned to the bathroom and scratched 2 marks behind the wall mirror frame. One for her, one for me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor against the far wall, knees pulled to my chest, listening to every creak and shuffle. My mind spun faster than it had in years. I imagined the layout of the building based on echoes, the distance from my room to the consultation hallway, the stairs that must lead to a second floor, the location of that file cabinet. Even if I never saw it, the knowledge that it existed gave me something I hadn't had before. Reach. Morning came with a different aid. A man I hadn't seen before. He didn't speak, just opened the door with a set of keys on a silent lanyard and motioned for me to follow. We went left this time, down a shorter hallway. No windows. At the end, a door opened into a different kind of room. Bright walls, soft chairs, a table with fruit in a plastic bowl. It looked like a dentist's waiting room, designed to lull. Helen was not there. Instead, Director Wallace stood near the window with a clipboard in hand. He smiled. "Mrs. Brennan, how are we feeling today?" "Still lucid," I replied. "Good. I'd like to offer a brief update. Your daughter has requested a delay in visitation. There's been a miscommunication about your current evaluation." "Miscommunication?" I repeated. "That's a generous word." "She's asked for more time to review options. Until then, we'll continue your stay as arranged." He paused. "Any questions?" "Yes," I said. "How do you sleep at night?" He didn't flinch. "With great care." Then he nodded to the aide. I was escorted back without further comment. Once alone again, I paced the room for nearly 2 hours. The news shook me, but it also confirmed what I suspected. Helen had tried, and Sharon had blocked her. But that meant the storm was reaching the surface. That night, at what I guessed was close to midnight, I sat facing the camera and said softly, "I was always the quiet one, the book person, the listener. But silence doesn't mean absence. You can erase access, food, light, voices, but not knowing, not memory. I remember who I am." Then I stood, walked to the bed, and began to tear the hospital-issued napkins into strips. I didn't know what I'd use them for yet. Messages, bindings, markers, but they would be ready. Let them come. Let Friday come. Friday arrived with the kind of silence that announces itself. No footsteps. No tray. No flickering camera. Just that charged quiet that feels more deliberate than noise. I sat in the chair by the bed, spine straight, hands folded in my lap. I'd combed my hair with my fingers, pressed the wrinkles from my blouse as best I could, and fixed my expression into one of calm authority. If Helen made it through the front door, I needed to be seen as the woman I was before they tried to fold me into paper. She had always had a way of entering rooms like a verdict. In law school, Helen once told me, her professor said, "Justice doesn't shout, it enters quietly and stops people mid-sentence." I hoped she'd walk in today with that same force, quiet, steady, undeniable. But I was prepared for the opposite, too. For absence. For news delivered by Wallace, or worse, silence dressed up as policy. I'd imagined the possibilities all night. The clock I'd scratched into the wall, 7 tallies now, told me we were nearing mid-morning. Then, at what I guessed was close to 11 soir, footsteps. Different from the others. Heels. Measured. Followed by a second pair, rubber soles, likely an escort. They stopped outside my door. A knock. "Mrs. Brennan," a voice said. Calm, firm. "You have a visitor." I stood before I even felt my knees cooperate. My throat tightened, but I said nothing. The door opened, and there she was. Helen Worthington, hair perfectly swept into a silver knot, eyes sharp behind reading glasses that hung from a fine gold chain. She wore a navy coat with a notepad tucked beneath her arm, and a look that could peel the paint from the walls. "Good morning, Nora," she said, as if I were sitting beside her in a courtroom and not in a holding cell disguised as care. Behind her stood a young man with a clipboard and confused eyebrows. He gestured awkwardly toward the hallway. "We've arranged a supervised conversation," he began. Helen turned to him slowly. "You'll arrange silence," she said. "I am Mrs. Brennan's legal counsel, and this is a privileged meeting. Leave us." He blinked. "Now." The boy left. The door clicked behind him. We were alone. Helen looked at me, and for a moment her expression softened. "You look tired." "I look like they want me to feel," I replied. She moved to the single chair opposite mine. Didn't sit right away, just scanned the room, the camera, the tray slot. "They're running an old game," she said. "Guardianship without court order, confinement by consent that was never given. I've seen it in elder exploitation cases before. They couch it in language like monitoring and safety. But what it is theft. I didn't sign anything, I told her. I know. And even if you had, it wouldn't have held. Sharon used a third-party affidavit from a man without medical licensure. I spoke to the state board last night. I felt breath return to my lungs, not all at once, but in small increments. Can you get me out? I'm already doing it, Helen said. But it takes time. There's paperwork, hearings. Meanwhile, I need you to keep notes, record details, names, times, anything. I already have, I said. Some hidden in the light fixture, some behind the mirror, a note in the toilet tank. She almost smiled. Still a librarian. They think I'm just old, I said. That's the first mistake predators make. Helen opened her notepad and passed me a single sheet. It was a copy of a property listing. My house. My name. But Sharon listed as legal representative. They tried to rush it, she said. The listing went live 5 days ago, but no offers yet. I've filed an emergency injunction. That should freeze the transaction for now. I stared at the paper. The photograph of my front steps. The white railing I'd repainted myself just last summer. My begonias. My porch swing. They were going to sell my life for a down payment, I said. Helen didn't interrupt. I folded the page slowly, precisely, like it was an obituary. Maybe it was. She reached into her bag again. Another sheet. This is a revocation form, she said. If we can prove you're competent, this overrides the power of attorney. But you'll need to sign it when we're in front of an authorized officer. Not today. Soon. I nodded. I can wait, I said. You've waited long enough. She stood to leave, but paused. Be ready, she said. Once the freeze is active, they may try to move you. New facility, new tactics. You need to be louder than they expect. I looked up at her. I've been quiet for 60 years. Then speak like you've got something to reclaim. I smiled then, the first real smile since the door had locked behind me. As she turned to go, I said, Tell them I remember everything. She didn't turn around. I already did. The door closed behind Helen with a soft thud, and I sat there in the hush that followed, feeling more awake than I had in days. The room hadn't changed. Same pale walls, same blinking camera, same stale scent of processed air. But I had changed. Not because Helen had handed me an escape plan, but because she had reminded me of something more important. I was still allowed to want things. Justice. Return. My name back. They brought lunch late. A younger girl I hadn't seen before, trying too hard not to make eye contact. She slid the tray through and disappeared before I could say a word. On the plate, bland pasta, a sliver of buttered toast, and, oddly, a plastic spoon. I stared at the utensil for a full minute. Spoons had been removed from my room on day 2. Too dangerous, they said. I wasn't sure what had changed, but I took it as a signal. Not from them, from Maya. She hadn't appeared since the warning note. I feared the worst, but feared more the idea that she was nearby and being silenced. That's how this place worked. Not by shouting people down, but by erasing their ability to speak. I ate slowly, saved the toast crust in a napkin, and used the spoon's handle to press another message into the lining of my shoe. A location, a name, one final instruction. If moved, contact Worthington immediately. No consent, no decline. I folded it into plastic wrap from yesterday's lunch and pressed it flat. My fingers ached more now, joints swollen, movements slower. But pain was not a stop sign, just a toll booth. That afternoon I was left alone. No check-in, no clipboard voice. I used the time to examine the mattress more carefully. There was a slit in the seam where I'd hidden Maya's glove. I widened it with the plastic spoon, creating a pocket big enough for more notes if needed, a place to store the documents Helen promised to bring. Around 5, the hallway changed. I heard a cart roll past, rubber wheels, metal frame. Not the food cart. Something heavier. Then voices. Male. And not ones I recognized. "You sure it's this room?" Director said so. "Quiet one. Could be trouble." My pulse climbed. I sat up, placed the spoon beneath the pillow, and straightened my blouse. The knock came seconds later. 2 men, security by posture, not uniform. One held a clipboard, the other stayed near the door. "Mrs. Brennan," clipboard said, "you've been selected for medical reassessment off-site. Temporary relocation." "No," I replied. He looked up, blinked. "This isn't optional. Transport is waiting." "I do not consent," I said clearly, "and you have no legal basis. You're not in a position to refuse." "I have counsel," I said. "Helen Worthington, licensed, active. You move me, it's unlawful detainment, and I will testify." The man at the door shifted. Clipboard's voice flattened. "Your daughter is being sued for fraudulent representation," I cut in. "Try again." They stared at me, quiet. Then Clipboard looked to his partner, who gave a slight shake of the head. "She's got outside attention," the second one muttered. "Let's verify with Wallace." And just like that, they left. I sat down slowly. My legs were shaking, but I didn't let them show it. I had won a round. Not the war, not yet. But a round. The camera blinked faster after that, almost frantic. I moved to the chair and stared into it. "You thought I'd be easy," I said aloud. "But you're not the first place I've had to survive in. And I know how paper works. I know how silence works. And I know how to wait." I stayed awake until midnight, scribbling names in the seam of the pillow with the tip of the spoon. Then I wrote one last word, deeper than the rest. Soon. The next morning began with a knock. Not the kind that waits for permission, but the kind that assumes entry. Director Wallace stepped in without a word from the hall, followed by a staff member holding a manila folder. He didn't smile this time, didn't pretend. That, more than anything, told me we were close. He stood beside the bed. "You've created quite a bit of disruption, Mrs. Brennan." I stayed in my chair. "No more than you deserve." He glanced at the aide, who quietly handed him the folder. "We've reviewed the recent interaction logs," he said. "Notes from your visitors, behavior assessments, camera transcripts. It seems you've been actively working against the care plan." "Which care plan is that?" I asked. "The one that involved locking me in a room and removing my utensils?" His expression didn't change. "Your legal advocate's visit has caused confusion," he continued. "We're exploring our options." "Good," I said. "Explore faster." He opened the folder. Inside was a single page. He placed it on the table between us. "This is a reassignment form. You'd be relocated to a different facility, one with more structure, more supervision. Temporarily, of course." I didn't move. "That's not a form. That's an ultimatum dressed in Times New Roman." His nostrils flared. "You're refusing care." "I'm refusing fraud." I could see him recalculating. That's what men like him do. They measure outcomes in silence, looking for the route that avoids noise. I knew the type. Ran into plenty during budget meetings in my years as head librarian. Men who smiled through manipulation and thought patience meant compliance. "I hope you know," he said finally, "that people who interfere with patient care are liable to consequences. That includes unauthorized staff." I stiffened. "Maya, you've already punished the wrong person once," I said. "I wouldn't do it again." Wallace gave a thin smile. "We'll be in touch." He left. The door clicked shut behind him, and I let myself sit all the way back in the chair. My legs were shaking again, but I didn't look down. That's how they win, by watching your body betray your words. But mine hadn't yet. I stayed seated for the next hour, watching the light move across the wall like a clock that refused to tick. At noon, the tray slot opened. Inside, a plate of toast, butter, scrambled eggs, still warm, and beneath the plate, a folded square of paper. I pulled it out and read quickly. I'm gone, suspended, but I left you a gift. Filing cabinet, second drawer, bottom left corner. M. I held the note in my lap for a long time. Maya had risked everything, and now she was gone. Pushed out or pulled back, either way, I wouldn't see her again. Not here. And yet, she'd left something. I began planning, not for escape, not exactly, for leverage. That afternoon, I pressed the button on the wall, the one they claimed didn't work. Just once. A voice crackled from above. State your need. I need to visit the second-floor consult wing, I said. Medical request. I've had tightness in my chest. Pause. Then, staff will evaluate. I waited. Half an hour later, an aide arrived. Not one I recognized. Neutral face, efficient movements. She opened the door and gestured. Consult wing. I followed her through the hall, up a narrow elevator that smelled of ammonia and tired air. The second floor was brighter, newer, the kind of surface-level improvement meant for inspections and donors. She led me to a side room, empty chairs, fake ficus in the corner. I'll return in 10, she said, and left. The moment the door clicked shut, I moved. Across the hall, I spotted it. The staff room. I'd only get one chance. I slipped inside. No cameras, no chatter, just shelves, lockers, and one tall gray filing cabinet. I crouched quickly, yanked the second drawer. Inside, papers, forms, ID copies, intake records. Bottom left corner, a thin manila envelope marked only with initials. I opened it, scanned the first page. Patient file. Brennan, Nora. Notes flagged by unauthorized aid. I flipped through quickly. There it was. Maya's handwriting in the margins. Words underlined. No psych eval. Camera use unregulated. No consent. And tucked behind it, a copy of a revoked medical power of attorney form, unsigned but typed, dated last year. A copy of a real estate listing. A handwritten schedule with staff names and security rounds. Evidence. I didn't take it. I didn't need to. I memorized the drawer, the label, the page positions. When the aide returned, I was seated, calm, breathing steady. No pain? She asked. Just passing, I said. Thank you. That night, I scratched a new word into the wood beneath my bed frame. Proof. I closed my eyes knowing something had shifted again. Not in my body, in the air around me. Let them come now. I wasn't just remembering, I was collecting. By the time the sun rose, if it did, I couldn't see it. I was already dressed. I wore the same pants as the day before, straightened the collar of my blouse and tied my thinning hair back with a strip of cloth I'd torn from an old pillowcase. There's a kind of armor that comes from preparation, and mine had nothing to do with metal or force. Mine was made of habit, intention, and memory. They didn't bring breakfast. I didn't care. I sat in the chair by the door, legs crossed at the ankle, spine straight, waiting like the old field generals used to wait for news. Calm, prepared. Just before noon, the door opened without warning. Helen stepped in. No escort. No announcement. Her coat was still buttoned, and her face was sharper than I'd ever seen it. She held a folder, thick, dog-eared, the kind that only accumulates when someone's done real work. They stalled me at the front desk, she said. 30 minutes of procedural nonsense, but they can't block me. I nodded once. They tried again yesterday. She raised an eyebrow. Removal, I said. Off-site reassignment. I refused. They backed down. Helen smiled grimly. Good. She sat across from me and opened the folder. Everything you told me has been corroborated. Maya's notes are intact. The medical power of attorney document is incomplete. Your daughter's affidavit has been flagged as fraudulent. And she paused, flipping pages. You're not the only one. I leaned forward. There are 5 residents listed under observational hold with no signed consent forms, no court-appointed oversight. Most of them have adult children listed as points of contact, all of whom have recently filed for access to financial assets or properties. My hands clenched around the armrest, not from surprise, from the certainty that comes when what you feared turns out to be exact. I knew, I said. I knew this was a pattern. Helen nodded. We've filed an injunction. A judge is reviewing it today. In the meantime, I'm initiating an emergency petition for release. We have enough evidence to force an independent evaluation within 72 hours. What happens to Sharon? That depends, she said. But the real estate sale is frozen. The bank has flagged the account for inquiry. If we can prove intent, we can, I said. Helen closed the folder and met my eyes. I'll say this once. You saved yourself. I just put ink where you already put blood. I exhaled slowly. She told me the caregiver would feed me, I said. And then they locked me in a room with a blinking light and called it safety. She wanted to be done with the hard part, Helen said. Most people do. But that's not how dignity works. No, I agreed. Dignity's a practice, like forgiveness or grief. She stood. I'll come tomorrow, with the court liaison. If they try to move you again, don't argue. Just stall. Name names, mention the petition, say unlawful detainment, say false guardianship. Loudly. I will. And Nora, she said, hand on the door, will get you out. I know. After she left, I stayed standing. I didn't want to sit. I wanted my feet on the ground when the truth cracked the walls. That night, the hallway was restless. Footsteps I didn't recognize. A door opened down the hall, loud, sudden. A muffled voice. I heard someone call out, "You can't," and then nothing. Silence swallowed whatever it was. They were stirring. Because we were stirring. I stood at the door and whispered through the frame. To whoever's listening. Dorothy. Marisol. Alfred. I don't know your faces, but I'm still here. And I haven't forgotten. I walked back to the bed and lay down fully clothed, eyes open. No camera blinked, no tray opened, no sound. They were deciding something. Let them. Because I wasn't deciding anymore. I was waiting for the door to open, not for Wallace, not for Sharon, for daylight. They came early. Before breakfast, before lights, before I'd even gotten up to wash my face. 3 of them, one with a clipboard, one with a tablet, and one silent man who didn't speak or blink. The kind who enters a room and becomes its weight. They didn't knock. They just opened the door and stepped inside like they owned the air. "Mrs. Brennan," said Clipboard, "you'll need to gather your things." I sat up slowly. "Where are you taking me?" He glanced at tablet. "A transfer's been initiated." "By whom?" "Facility administration." I stayed seated. "Is this an emergency relocation?" Silence. "Do you have a transport order?" More silence. "I see," I said, swinging my feet over the side of the bed. "So this is an unofficial maneuver, a quiet extraction." Silent man shifted slightly. Not forward, just enough to remind me that he was not there for questions. I stood, slowly. I didn't tremble this time. They wanted fear, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I was past that. "May I collect my belongings?" I asked. Tablet nodded. Quickly. I moved to the bed, pulled on my shoes, slipped the folded paper from the mattress lining into my waistband. The note with Helen's number, the staff schedule, the evidence list. I had copies now, hidden in 3 different places. I turned and faced them. "I will come with you," I said clearly. "But I do not consent. I am being moved without lawful cause, in violation of a pending legal injunction. I am alert, oriented, and under active counsel. I will repeat this in front of any third party." Clipboard blinked. Tablet hesitated, but they didn't back off. The hallway outside was cold. Not the air, the feeling. Staff turned their eyes downward. One woman passed us without a word, clutching a clipboard so tightly her knuckles went white. I recognized her from early on. She used to deliver trays. She didn't look at me. We reached the elevator. I waited until the doors opened. Then I turned, loudly. "My name is Nora Brennan. I do not consent to this transfer. This is a violation of my rights under state elder protection law." Clipboard grabbed my elbow, too hard. I yanked it free. "That's assault," I said. He looked stunned. The elevator doors closed. No one spoke on the ride down. We descended in the silence of a war room after a lost battle. They thought this was a final move, a reset. Get me out before Helen returned, before the court acted, before I could testify. But I wasn't the same woman they had locked in that room 11 days ago. I knew the name of every staffer. I knew the staff room, the camera pattern, the timing of tray deliveries. I had allies, and I had my name back. We exited into a garage. A van waited, white, plain, no markings. Then a voice, "Stop." Sharp, clear, from behind. Everyone turned. Helen. Hair wind-blown, breath fast, but calm in her stance. A man stood beside her, holding a clipboard that mattered, real authority. His badge hung visible from a lanyard. "Court injunction," she said, holding up a folder. "Effective as of 7:32 a.m. today. Any further action will be considered obstruction." Tablet hesitated. Silent man didn't move. Clipboard reached for his phone. "No need," Helen said. "The sheriff's department is en route. You'll want to be here when they arrive." I exhaled slowly. My knees almost gave, but I stood still. Helen stepped toward me. "Are you hurt?" "No," I said. "Did they touch you?" "Only fear," I said. "And I didn't let it in." She turned back to the staff. "This woman is under my legal protection. You move her again, and I will file for criminal interference with court proceedings." Clipboard lowered his hand. Helen turned to me. "Come on, Nora." I didn't ask where we were going. I followed her, back through the hallway, past the aides who suddenly remembered how to make eye contact, through the front lobby, where the security guard shifted uncomfortably, and out, finally, into the air. Real air. July air. Heavy, warm, imperfect. It hit my lungs like new truth. Helen opened the car door herself. I sat, slowly. She turned on the engine, drove in silence. It wasn't until we reached the first traffic light that I finally spoke. "They were never watching to protect us," I said. "Only to control." Helen didn't answer. She didn't need to. We were already free. The first night home, I didn't sleep. Not from fear, but because silence in a familiar room sounds louder than silence in a locked one. Everything in the house was exactly where I'd left it. The green chair by the window, the teacup on the shelf, the crack in the paint above the stove I'd meant to fix for a decade, but the air had changed. It wasn't time that had shifted the space. It was me. My body didn't trust the freedom yet. My hands still hovered before opening doors. My ears still tilted at night for footsteps that wouldn't come. Helen had stayed just long enough to help me settle. She'd made tea, walked through every room with the cautious eye of someone trained to see where danger hides. She'd taken the spare key, promised to come by again in the morning. After she left, I just sat, on the edge of the bed, clothes still on, shoes near the door, like I might need to run again. I didn't. But still, I didn't sleep. In the morning, I made toast, with butter. I chose the plate myself, poured the tea, stirred it with a spoon, my spoon, a small act, a holy one. The mail arrived late. Among the envelopes, one from the bank, one from the county clerk's office, and one from a law firm I didn't recognize. I read them in order. The bank confirmed the freeze on my account had been lifted. Sharon's access revoked. All transactions now required my signature in person. The county clerk's letter confirmed the house title was intact, undisturbed, still mine. The third envelope, the law firm, was different. Inside was a typed letter, polite in tone. It stated that Sharon McCabe had retained counsel to dispute elements of the injunction and that communication would proceed through formal legal channels. No apology, no explanation, just paperwork. That night, I walked through the house slowly, touched the edges of the tables, ran my hand over the back of the couch, turned on every light. Not out of fear, but out of ritual. I had to remind myself that this was mine. Every chair, every creak, every corner of dust. This was the life I had kept upright for decades, and they had tried to turn it into an inheritance before I was done using it. I found an old photo on the mantel, Sharon at 6, missing a front tooth, clutching a ribbon in one hand. She looked so proud then, and I remembered that day, the library spelling bee. She had won by spelling magnanimous. I sat on the couch and held the photo for a long time. She wasn't always like this. Entitlement is a disease that grows slow. It starts in small permissions, skipping phone calls, avoiding holidays, forgetting birthdays. Then it blossoms, fed by silence and assumption, until it convinces a person they've earned what was never theirs to take. That night, I wrote her a letter. Not for pity, not to restore anything, just to say what hadn't been said. I told her what they did to me, what she allowed, what she'll never take again. I didn't send it. Not yet. But I left it on the kitchen table, where sunlight would hit it first in the morning, where I would see it with clear eyes the next day, decide if it needed to travel. Then I made a list. Names: Dorothy Lynn, Marisol Peña, Alfred Milner. Next to each, questions. Where are they now? Who is helping them? Are they still inside? I didn't want to be the kind of woman who escapes and then forgets the walls, so I wouldn't. Helen had given me a path, but they had given me a reason. That night I fell asleep with the windows open. No locks. Just wind. Just the sound of my house breathing again. And for the first time in weeks, I dreamed of nothing. I spent the next few days in motion, not restless, not running, just deliberate. I made lists every morning. What needed repair, what needed returning, what needed remembering. I cleaned out the pantry, called the locksmith, went room by room and opened every drawer, every cabinet. I touched my life back into place. Helen came by with updates. Sharon hadn't responded to the court's request for financial documentation. That would hurt her case. She'd also ignored 2 certified letters. Helen's mouth curled at that. She's betting on your fatigue, she said. She thinks you'll retreat. Stay quiet. Be grateful and go still. I almost laughed. Then she never knew me. We were sitting on the porch. The air was thick, summer pushing at the edges. My tea had gone cold, but I liked it that way. Everything felt calmer. Cold? Helen placed a small folder on the table. We have a hearing in 2 weeks, but there's something else. She handed me a printout. It was a staff photo, 8 people, arms crossed, all in medical blues. Maya's clinic, she said. She's found a new job, Safer, smaller. They're vetting her story carefully. She's protected now. I didn't speak for a long time. When I did, I said, "She reminded me what it felt like to be seen." Helen nodded. She wasn't supposed to care, but she did. "She's the reason you're out." "No," I corrected. "She's the reason I didn't break." Helen didn't argue. That afternoon, I wrote a letter to the state ombudsman's office. Simple, clear, detailed. I used the margins to list names: Dorothy, Marisol, Alfred, and dates, approximate schedules, things I remembered. I included the file drawer, the note in the toilet tank, the unsent evaluations. I sent copies to 2 local reporters. Not because I thought they'd publish, because someone should know. Because somewhere, someone's mother is being quiet in a locked room right now. And someone's daughter is saying, "Don't worry, the caregiver will feed her." And it's a lie. The next day, I went to the market. A woman I hadn't seen in a while waved from the end of an aisle. Her face lit up, then fell. "I heard you were away," she said. "I was," I replied. She waited, unsure. "I'm back," I added. She nodded. "You look good, strong." I smiled. I had to be. I came home with groceries and a bag of lemon candies, just because I used to love them. I filled the house with the smell of garlic and broth, opened the windows again, let the air move through every room. Then I sat down and picked up the letter I'd written to Sharon. I reread it. I didn't soften it. I added one line at the end. "You don't get to decide how my story ends." I folded it, placed it in an envelope, not stamped, not sealed. It would sit there, on the kitchen counter. A reminder, not for her, but for me, that I had a story, that I still owned it, that I was telling it now. The hearing was short. Helen said they often are, when the evidence is clear and the lies too thin to stand. The judge read the affidavits, reviewed the documentation, and asked only 2 questions. "Do you feel safe in your home, Mrs. Brennan?" And, "Do you wish to maintain full legal autonomy?" I answered both without pausing. He signed the revocation order within the hour. Sharon's power of attorney was nullified. The court declared me competent and restored sole control of my affairs. I thought I'd feel victorious. I didn't. I felt right. Aligned. Back where I was meant to be. Outside the courthouse, Helen and I stood by her car. It was humid again. The kind of day where everything sticks, even your breath. "You're free now," she said. "I've always been free," I replied. "They just tried to convince me otherwise." She nodded, quietly. We didn't hug. I didn't need comfort, just company. She gave me that. In the weeks that followed, things returned. Slowly. The neighbors started waving again. The phone rang with real voices. I began attending town meetings, sitting near the back, listening more than I spoke. One afternoon, I stopped by the local library. They'd moved the nonfiction. I didn't complain. They asked me to give a talk for Elder Awareness Month. I almost said no. But then I remembered Dorothy, Marisol, Alfred, the others I'd never met but felt in my bones. I stood at that podium and told the truth. Calmly, clearly, not to accuse, but to illuminate. When I finished, no one clapped at first. It wasn't that kind of story. Then someone stood, then another. No cheering, just respect. That was enough. I still get letters. Quiet ones. From women who've been silenced, from sons who feel guilt, from daughters who are trying to undo harm they didn't see soon enough. I answer what I can. I tell them what Maya told me. Start small. Start with a name. Some days, I light a candle for the ones who didn't get out. Some days, I just sit on the porch and listen to the wind. And I still haven't mailed that letter to Sharon. Maybe I never will. Maybe she'll come someday. And I'll say what needs saying, not to hurt her, but to show her I survived despite her. Not because of her. I'm old, I'm tired, but I'm not broken. They tried to reduce me to a patient file, a burden, a problem to be contained. But I was never a problem. I was a woman, with a voice no one expected to hear again. And I used it. If this story found you and you saw something of yourself inside it, don't look away. Share it. Leave a comment. Let them know we're still here.